And welcome to Politics Unplugged. I'm Dennis Welch, and we turn our attention tonight what may be one of the most closely watched races in Arizona next year, the election for Secretary of State. And joining us now is the latest entrant into that race, Mark Robert Gordon, who is a Democrat. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So really quick, give us an introduction to yourself. Who are you, and why did you decide to run for this office?
Well, I'm an Arizona native. I went to high school here. I grew up in Arizona that was very different. It was where people respected one another, people respected other people's viewpoints. One thing I remember is I worked on a campaign in 1986 for Carolyn Warner for governor. She was expecting to face Burton Barr, leader of the legislature. And she will tell you for the other party, and she didn't because somebody else, Evan Meekum, came out of that primary, but she will tell you today that Burton Barr would have made a wonderful governor.
Sure.
And who does that now? Who is talking about the other party in such a cordial and respectful way? And what we have here is we've lost respect for one another. We've lost a way of dealing with our politics, of having different philosophies, but still being able to have a conversation, and we need to bring that back to Arizona. So I'm an election protection and voting rights attorney. I have been doing federal election law for a few decades now. I go around the country making sure that voting rights are preserved and defended, and making sure that voting systems work well. And unfortunately, one of the states that I keep getting sent back to over the years, and I live here full-time, and it's very convenient for me, unfortunately, but it's Arizona, because we've had some voting rights issues, and unfortunately, most recently, it's gotten
and I think everybody remembers those long lines in the presidential preference election in 2016, as well as issues with pamphlets and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So what are you proposing to do that's different than what the current occupant, Michelle Reagan, is doing right now?
Well, I think the first thing that any election official anywhere in the country needs to do, whether it's the Secretary of State or County Recorder or anybody working in elections, they should be waking up every single morning and asking, how do I make it easier for people to vote? How do I increase civic participation?
Sure.
And that doesn't seem to be a governing philosophy of this administration. This administration has put up barriers. They have not been a voice for voting rights. They have made it more and more difficult, increasingly difficult, for people to exercise those fundamental rights.
Yeah, but that's not the Secretary of State. I mean, whether or not she supports some of those changes, a lot of those decisions have been made in the legislature. You're a Democrat, so Republican-controlled legislature. How would you be able to convince them to, approve policies that you support?
Well, you're correct that the law is made by the legislature and signed by the governor, not the Secretary of State's office. But the Secretary of State still is the chief elections officer of the state. It sets the tone. And certainly you need someone with a strong voice looking out for the people of Arizona. When you have those 6-hour lines, when you have 200,000 people not getting their election pamphlets as is statutorily required, and even the Republican Attorney General said that the law was broken last week, and by the Secretary of State's office, you certainly do not have an election official as a chief elections official in the Secretary of State's office that is looking out for the best interests of the people. So that's one thing, is I will always keep the people first, not my political career first, because I'm not aiming for any political career other than to fix this broken system. That said, my job as an attorney, my job as a negotiator, my job in business has always been about persuasion, negotiation, talking and listening to people. And we can, as I said before, we can have disagreements on certain philosophies, but we need to be able to come together. This is the United States of America. We need to be able to come together and have conversations and find the common ground. And certainly the common ground is our Constitution and our laws, and making sure that everyone has that fundamental right to vote.
Sure. Okay, and now running elections, really just a small part of your job. Obviously, you can debate whether it's the most important. Some people will probably say yes. But there are other issues, that come up with the Secretary of State's office, corporation registration, those kinds of things. But however, part of the elections is the campaign finance reporting. Currently, right now, state lawmakers don't have to report really anything in off-year elections. Would you be for more transparency and immediate reporting on campaign finance contributions for elected officials in Arizona?
What is wrong with making things open? If everybody knows that somebody is donating to a campaign, that someone is helping support a campaign, why don't we see it? There's no secret here. There shouldn't be a secret here because we know someone is paying for something. So It was supposed to have been transparent. Michelle Reagan campaigned on transparency. She said that she was going to have the system to get rid of dark money, was going to make everything transparent, have this grand website. It's actually made it less transparent, as it turns out, once she got into office. So that's not helping open it up. I think we have a democracy that's here to represent all the people, regardless of party. Regardless of party. And we should be able to see who is sponsoring and who is voicing their opinion by their dollars in that discussion.
And should it be in real time? I mean, we've got the technology to go out there, and these things should be able to update automatically when you report them. As I was saying, right now, when you're in an off-year election, lawmakers don't have to report a single dollar of what they've raised or spent during that year. It's only really every 2 years in election cycles that they have to do that.
Well, there's certain, so again, this comes from the legislature. Yeah. There are laws that are put into place as to when things are. The Secretary of State's office is not there to make the law, and fully in that regard. It's in terms of enacting the law and making certain policies that go with it. In terms of when disclosure should happen, there's a certain reporting period that happens with anything. You have to give time for certain things to happen, to be reported. Some campaigns need to put some things in place first to make sure that the report is accurate and get it certified first before filing it. But once it's filed, why shouldn't it be available to the public? Transparency. It's about the public's access to information. And the public has this, what I think is an absolute right to this access to this information. Who is sponsoring whom in terms of our candidates?
Sure. And another thing, sticking with the transparency point of view, lobbyist and registration as part of your job is also to report like lobbyist expenditures. Would you do anything there to be more transparent? Do you think there needs to be more transparency with what lobbyists are spending on with lawmakers?
Well, lobbyists' issue and their spending issue has become an issue of late, and we've seen that in the reporting of late. I believe there should be reporting. I believe in transparency. I believe that we should have an open system. The government is there to serve us. And if that is the fundamental principle, just like with elections, that, you know, we should be making it easier for people in elections, we should also be giving people knowledge. What's wrong with information?
All right. Well, thanks a lot. That's all the time we have for this segment, but I'm sure we'll be talking more as this campaign unfolds in the future here. But we do have more to come here on Politics Unplugged, including new allegations of sexual harassment. This time, Democrat Senator Al Franken called out for this photo and alleged behavior behind it. A closer look at his response and what the president has to say about it. And the U.S. House passed the tax bill it says will give you some relief. But as we find out next, the Senate may have something different in store for the middle-class Americans. A tax hike just ahead.
Ooh, what is it? Awesome,
Hi, it's Royal Norman from 3TV, Arizona's Family. Help to make the holidays a magic time for all kids through Arizona's Family Christmas Angel Program. Find an angel tree at one of the 14 Valley shopping malls. Pick a tag, return the new unwrapped gift, and earn your wings, bringing joy to a child in need.
Christmas Angel is sponsored by your local Taco Bell franchisees.
Thank you from 3TV, Arizona's Family.
The insurance company is looking out for their own interests as well as those interests of their insured. So you should definitely have somebody that knows the business, that's willing to take on the big bully insurance companies and protect your interests and your rights.
Call 977-1900.
Medicare open enrollment ends December 7th, so it's time to talk to Cigna, where our one priority is you. We want to help you choose a Medicare Advantage plan now that fits your needs. Cigna Plus You means our plans are designed around you, with an approach to healthcare led by your doctor. Call Cigna now to learn about your options and get a free guide. There's no obligation. Cigna puts you first, with plans that offer no monthly premiums, no primary doctor copays, prescription drug coverage, even dental and vision services. With a Medicare Advantage plan from Cigna, you'll enjoy one more advantage. A focus on preventive care designed to help you stay healthy. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Don't wait. Choose a partner that puts you first. Cigna. Call 1-800-331-1995. That's 1-800-331-1995. Cigna. Together all the way.
It's Black Friday here at American Furniture Warehouse, and you won't believe these incredible deals. This model dining sectional at $498 in 2 colors is a great Black Friday special. Or this complete 6-piece dining set is only $465. This Augusta daybed is Black Friday priced at $248. American Furniture Warehouse is your Black Friday headquarters.
As a victim of an automobile accident, you are the underdog. These are billion-dollar insurance companies that have unlimited resources at their disposal to resolve your claim for as little money as possible.
Murder and rope is the way to go. Call 977-1900.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Tonight's hot topic is taxes. The House this past Thursday approved a sweeping overhaul of the tax code. Among other things, it calls for slashing the corporate rate from 35% to 20%, reduces the number of tax brackets, and cuts or eliminates many deductions. And joining us now to put some perspective on this and how much relief middle-class families might benefit is Heather Long, economic correspondent for The Washington Post. Heather, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And I guess the first question is, this was billed as a tax cut for the middle class. Is this a tax cut for the middle class?
That is the key question. So the average tax cut for the middle class next year is estimated to be around $800. So that sounds pretty good. But remember, that's the average tax cut. So some families would pay more, some would pay less. And believe it or not, about 8% of families in the middle class would have to pay more in taxes next year. So it kind of depends on your circumstances. You know, do you take a lot of medical deductions? Do you take a lot of deductions for state and local property taxes? If so, this bill isn't as good for you. Yeah. However, the bill gets worse over time. So basically what happens is Republicans have decided to give a permanent tax cut to businesses and to let the tax cuts and some of the tax breaks expire for the middle class after the 5 to 8 years, depending upon which version of the bill you're talking about. So when you look kind of 5 to 10 years down the road, you see a quarter of Americans would be paying more. And a lot of people are asking, is that the right trade-off?
So what's the reaction then in the Capitol to this bill? We've seen those numbers that, you know, by 2027 it looks like families making under $75,000 a year will see a tax increase. Is this anybody getting cold feet on the Republican side at this point? Because at least in the Senate it seems like they don't have a lot of numbers to lose.
You're right. You're exactly right. So this could very easily play out just how the health care bill played out over the summer, where the House of Representatives passes the bill, everyone cheers, and then it dies in the Senate. Right now, you're right. Those critical numbers that came out yesterday showing a lot of tax increases for families making under $75,000 really shook a lot of people up on the Hill. You have a lot of those usual swing votes, maybe votes like Senator Collins out of Maine. She said, look, I don't know about this. I'm not sure enough is being done for the middle class. And a surprise this week, we saw Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, a Republican who's normally a yes vote in line with the party. He said he doesn't think that the bill is doing enough for small businesses. So we've got a number of people starting to raise concerns also from your state there. We have Senator McCain and Senator Flake, and they are concerned about how much money this bill adds to the debt. So it's estimated to be just about $1.5 trillion adding to the debt if we go ahead with this bill. So this is definitely not a guarantee.
What about the Medicaid? What about the repeal of the Obamacare mandate, that individual mandate that you have to go out and buy insurance out there? Now, that's been tacked onto this bill. How is that being received in Washington?
A lot of people I speak to think that it was a mistake to add that to this bill. It just makes the tax bill very complicated. Now we've got a tax bill and a health care bill going on. That's more stuff for people to object to, and it's not unclear how this is helping the process at all. We just had the House pass a version of the tax bill that does not include the repeal of the individual mandate. So now the Senate is going to move forward with that. You know, at some point they're going to have to reconcile, and it looks likely that that individual mandate piece won't stay in. Also, a lot of people point out if it does stay in, that would likely lead to higher insurance premiums in this country and potentially up to 13 million people who would drop out of insurance, become uninsured. That's not something that's a real selling point.
So talk to me then a little bit about the politics then and what's driving this forward. It sounds like it's not exactly a tax cut for the middle class as it was billed. There's concerns about the trillions of dollars added to the debt over the next decade, and now you're talking about 13 million people losing health insurance. What is driving this bill forward?
Well, two things. First of all, I would say that the majority of people in America would get a tax cut for the next few years. So that's a talking point of House Speaker Paul Ryan's, and that is true. I think the bigger question here is, should America have a stronger and faster growing economy? Since the recession, we've been growing about 2% a year, which I like to call good, but it's not great. What Republicans and what President Trump has promised since he came into office is he really wants to see growth get back to the historic norm in this country, which is over 3%. And so Republicans are trying to figure out, how do we boost growth? Their best offer on the table is this tax bill, which would reduce taxes for corporations and for small businesses, and they hope that will really unleash economic growth. Now, there's a big debate about whether that will happen or not, but that's really what's driving this.
Okay, it seems like you have competing bills. You have you got a House version, you have a Senate version. Which one do you think at the end of the day is going to win out and make it the farthest?
You know, if you had asked me that question a week ago, I would say pay attention to the Senate bill. But since they added that individual mandate, I think that really makes that Senate bill messy. And so what we're hearing is actually a lot of parts of the House bill are now becoming more and more important. So I would say the House bill at the moment is certainly setting the standard right now.
All right, and final question: are we going to see any more? Are we going to see like a dramatic night like we saw with the health care repeal over the summer, where Senator McCain walks onto the floor of the Senate and gives everybody the thumbs down? You think it's going to get that far? Or you think it's going to pass?
Well, I think the best comments I've heard on this bill are that there's a 65% chance of passing. So it's a pretty good chance of passing, but it's certainly not a slam dunk. And yes, I think the first 2 weeks of December, lobbyists in D.C. were sending around a note saying, don't make any vacation plans. It's going to be pretty wild.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this segment. Thank you very much, Heather, for joining us for this discussion. And we have more Politics Unplugged just ahead. We'll be right back.
Furniture and Mattress grand opening of its newest locations in Mesa, Phoenix, and Tempe. Deluxe Queen foam mattresses from only $199. Simmons Beauty Rest mattress sets from only $249 each piece. 7-piece living room packages from only $398. Take it home today with low easy payments. Free layaway, same-day delivery. Ends November 30th at American Freight, Mesa on East University Drive, Phoenix, West Indian School Road, and in Tempe on South Priest Drive.
No contract, no risk, no catch with Cox High-Speed Internet. Call today and do everything you love online with Cox High-Speed Internet, starting at only $29.99 a month. Cox High-Speed Internet delivers the super fast speed you need to surf, stream, and download, with speed options up to 300 megabits per second. Plus, with most plans, you'll have free access to more than 500,000 Wi-Fi hotspots around town and when you travel. And Cox High-Speed Internet is now available with new panoramic Wi-Fi that blasts super fast internet across your entire home. There's no contract, and it's all backed by our 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's absolutely risk-free with a guaranteed 2-hour appointment window. With Cox High-Speed Internet, get blazing speed at a great low price, starting at just $29.99 a month. And ask about wall-to-wall fast panoramic Wi-Fi, our best in-home Wi-Fi. Call today.
When every day is game day, you need a winning strategy to defeat pain. At Catalyst Pain Solutions, our team goes on offense to help you overcome that pain. Our personalized approach targets, treats, and eliminates your pain at the source. Our safe, non-invasive treatments help you return to an active, pain-free lifestyle. Tackle pain at the source with Catalyst Pain Solutions. Set up your appointment today. Visit CatalystPainSolutions.com or call 480-821-7246.
Other trucks got your back, like the 2017 Nissan Titan, which comes standard with a 5.6-liter V8 and America's best truck warranty. 5 years, 100,000 miles, inside and out, bumper to bumper. Take on today. Now get special Black Friday savings, and with holiday bonus cash, save up to $13,490 on Titan XD, or get the 2017 Frontier starting at just $18,390.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. We're talking now with political analyst Christine Jones and consultant Chip Scutari. Thank you both for being here. Pleasure. And tonight we're talking about sexual harassment, not only in Washington, but it's filtered down here into the state capitol, and it's forcing a lot of people to really reevaluate how they think and how they behave. And Christine, I want to get your opinion. We've seen some allegations now made against Senator Don Shooter. I think there are now 9 women who have stepped forward and accused him of either harassment or just lewd behavior in their presence. Your take on all of this?
Well, I think it's too early to say whether there's truth to the allegations, although I do know from being in the private sector for a long time that often there is at least some truth when these things come forward. My big concern is that the behavior is pretty pervasive, and it goes a lot of times from men against women, but in some cases against men and boys as well. We should be very cautious about jumping to conclusions and swinging this pendulum so wide that every single human interaction becomes offensive. Because if everything is sexual harassment, nothing is sexual harassment. So as to Shooter, I say, let's let the investigation play itself out. Let's hear what they have to say. If he was acting inappropriately, then let's have a consequence for those actions.
Now, Speaker J.D. Mesnard has called for investigations, and as they're looking into all of these accusations, how do you think he's been handling the situation so far?
I think pretty well. He's been pretty judicious dealing with this issue. It's not a partisan issue. This is something that's going to affect both political parties, affect our society. And I think when we get, now that all this stuff has bubbled to the surface, I actually think it can be a cathartic moment for society, that people feel they have the voice to speak out. And I think it's important, as people often say, we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable talking about this issue. Because for far too long, white men, like us, have been in power, and women didn't feel, liberated to speak, and now they do, and that's a positive thing for our society. All right.
Now, Governor Doug Ducey, full disclosure, your former opponent.
My former opponent, that's right.
You ran against each other for governor a few years back. Now, how do you think he's handled the situation? Now, he has come out and said that in his experience that there is a lot of truth when women come forward and make these accusations.
Well, first of all, he came out boldly against any form of harassment and said under no circumstances is this appropriate at any time, at any place, and I think that's right. That's a good first step. The question then is going to be, as to Speaker Mesnard's behavior, can what they've adopted in the House as a policy be set forth maybe, further down the line in terms of state agencies and that sort of thing? But I think if he takes just the opportunity to the bully pulpit to say this is a tipping point, and adults, grow up and stop acting like idiots, and when you're in the workplace, you must be professional. That is just that for the governor's office and the governor himself to say, you know what, we're not going to tolerate this. We're all going to interact like normal human beings. I think is a great first step for the ninth floor to take, and then we'll see what happens. And you say catharsis. I really think that's a great way to say it, Chip. We'll see what happens as the investigation plays itself out.
But I think real quick to what Governor Ducey said, that most of these allegations are true. Statistics over the years will prove that out, that most of the time, and the women accusing people of sexual harassment does turn out to be true. Not in all cases, and we have to take this on a case-by-case basis and be careful.
Yeah, look, we're seeing this play out in so many different in the media, in Hollywood, in politics. Is this a watershed moment right now?
Absolutely. I think from it started almost this latest iteration started with the Harvey Weinstein allegations. Now there are different levels of how serious and how terrible they are, but it's definitely a tipping point, as Christine said, for our society. And I think it's going to be good that my children will feel, my daughter will feel emboldened to speak out if something happens. And it's just some of the cultural norms aren't acceptable anymore, and we're in a new reality.
But if I could quickly make the point before you pivot segments to say it's critical that we not go too far on this, and that we don't conflate stupid jokes and fraternity pranks and the things that people say and do on a normal day-to-day basis with actual sexual assault and sexual harassment, some of which rise to the level of a crime. Because victims of those sorts of bad behavior should not be marginalized, and their experiences should not be minimized by throwing everything into the pile of sexual assault, because they are two very different things.
Absolutely.
All right, now I want to pivot now to the national scene, where we saw U.S. Senator Al Franken says he welcomes an ethics investigation after Los Angeles radio show host Leanne Tweeden accused Franken of inappropriate behavior on a USO trip back in 2006. She says Franken forced a kiss on her during a rehearsal for a skit. He also took a photo of himself seeming to grope her while she was asleep, tweet, and says Franken also seemed to gloat over the incident during the remainder of that tour. Really kind of surprising here. You know, what do you think? How do you think he handled the response? He put out a first response, and then there was a second response.
Well, the first response was unacceptable and didn't go far enough. It wasn't serious enough. And you have to remember, he came from a culture of, you know, as a writer for Saturday Night Live. There's, you know, a lot of different things happened on that show when they were prepping for the show. Not to make any excuses. What he did was terrible and it was wrong. And I wish his second apology was his first apology. And you know, I agree there should be an investigation to see if there are any other incidents. A lot of times these things snowball. You know, something happens to, you know, Senator X, and then you realize 3 or 4 other things have happened in the past. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and Christine, it seems like for the people who were upset with President Donald Trump last year during the campaign when the Billy Bush tape came out about with the president talking about grabbing women, it seems like if people thought that was disqualifying, then they should probably also be thinking that what Franken did is disqualifying because it's basically the same stuff, and maybe that he should resign.
Well, and this goes back to my point about not conflating stupid jokes with actual assault, because as egregious and awful and obnoxious as it was, Al Franken, I think, was still on Saturday Night Live when that picture was taken, and it was clearly a joke. There's a difference between that and him actually forcibly kissing this woman when they were practicing this skit, right? The two things should not be confused. There's a difference between Donald Trump blathering on and being a bully about, you know, what he can do to women and actually doing it. Words aren't actions, and vice versa. So, you know, Al Franken is a genuinely funny human being. I've testified in front of him. I could barely keep a straight face, and I know he's constantly joking. That doesn't excuse any bad behavior, so the investigation has to get to the facts, and if he assaulted somebody, he's got to go.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, too, that the president had tweeted out, with no sense of irony that I could pick up, that what happened with Franken looks really bad for him. You care to respond to that?
Well, I would say, you know, going back to what we talked about previously, statistics have shown that most women who allege sexual assault or sexual harassment, if that is true, I recall during the presidential election there probably were a dozen women, maybe more, who have alleged that then candidate Trump sexually harassed them. So maybe there needs to be another ethics investigation of Donald Trump, you know, during the course of all these proceedings.
All right, let's move on now to another big court ruling here in Arizona. It has to do with Medicaid expansion. And Chip, maybe explain that and why this is such a big deal for Arizona.
Sure. Basically, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the Medicaid expansion or restoration was okay to go. It was not a tax. Which, you know, huge implications for not only our state's fiscal health. I think it saves $300 million for the state budget. It helps 400,000 people keep their health care. It also will probably help down the line with health and wellness, fighting this opioid crisis. It would have been devastating if these people were to lose their health care while we're also trying to fight this opioid crisis, which Governor Ducey has declared an emergency. On many levels, huge news, positive news for the state of Arizona, in my opinion.
And Christine, your reaction to it?
Yeah, I mean, I would look at this, if I could put my lawyer hat on for a second, more as a pure legal analysis. This seemed to be a case of bad drafting, and we've seen a lot of those in Arizona, where the drafters of the ballot proposition sort of went to the court to say, could you please rescue us from our own bad drafting? And so I'm not at all surprised by the outcome of the case. I think that was the right legal decision. I think it's unfortunate as a conservative, but we'll get to that later.
Here comes the music, so that means that's all the time we have for the show this week. But be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged.
Free